It's exciting because I'm a big Star Trek fan,
Yeah.
and and of course you can see all the stars behind me.
Yeah, I love it.
But growing up with the Star Trek as a Star Trek fan and having that futuristic aspect, that futuristic idea, and that so much of it is based on real science and what's going on. Could you tell me about your role as the consultant on all these
Yeah.
Star Trek shows?
It's great. I mean, Star Trek has a long legacy of science. As you know, it just has a thread of science throughout it. They've had science advisors all the way through the franchise. And I was brought on for season 3 of Star Trek Discovery when Michelle Paradise came on as the showrunner for it. She had come up with the idea for the burn, and she wanted to have some scientists come in to help create like a backbone for the story. And so that was sort of my first one-off job. And then I'd like to think it went well. and they had all these other shows in production, pre-production, that were greenlit and they were going forward. I live in Los Angeles. I've been doing some science advising on other things here and there. And so we had a conversation about just having one scientist be sort of the focal point for all of these shows to manage, like, not just make sure the science is right, but to make sure that, like, all of the Star Trek technology that we see is consistent, talked about appropriately, and all of those things. So I help manage all of that as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So when it actually comes to working on the show, I mean, you're consulting with, I'm guessing, the writers and the showrunners on all of that. How does that dynamic end up working?
Yeah, there needs to be a little bit of trust that we build over time. A lot of writers have had negative experiences working with science advisors in the past, where they get their script torn apart, and and I really try to come in with a different approach because I am a sci-fi fan. I love television. I love movies, and so I come in with like a yes and attitude. Like, let's do it. Let's roll up our sleeves. Whatever weird, wacky thing you want to do, we'll make it work. And so as soon as I start to build that trust, then they bring me in pretty early in the script writing process. So when they're coming up with ideas, and they've learned, and we've all learned, that that does make it makes for an easier process down the line when we
Mhm.
all are kind of on the same page scientifically with the story. And so, yeah, I mostly work with the writers. I sit in the writers' room as many times as they need me, kind of on call for to pop in as needed, or I'll just sit there one day a week. If they want to use me, great. If not, I get to learn and see how the writers' room is working. And then I also work in post production. So I work with the graphics teams, the visual effects and the motion graphics, and help them get equations right, get data graphs in the background right, get all of our space stuff in the background look good. And that's always a really fun, complicated, hard process because these things are expensive. It all takes time. So it's fun.
And so when it comes to, I'm always interested in everything when it comes to this. When it comes to the graphics, obviously there's a lot of artistic aspect that comes into Star Trek as well. How do you find that balance on real science and their kind of artistic futuristic ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge has probably been the Star Trek Discovery era, and which is also the era that Starfleet Academy is taking place in, where we are like in the future of the future. So we've taken all of the Star Trek stuff that we know and love and we are all used to seeing, and then go, well, what if we took that and took that into the future? And what does that look like? And that's where they came up with things like programmable matter, that, is sort of like the replicator plus, that just, you don't need a replicator for it. It will rearrange itself and align how you need it. And with the visuals too, certainly, we live in an era of such great graphical processing and the ability to see such cool things, but we still want it to evoke an emotion. And so there's been many times where we've had to have things like, in Discovery, we had a binary black hole system that we were seeing that we had to be close to. And we want to convey it appropriately. So it's a lot of like, okay, Erin, does this make you cringe? Or like, should we slightly tweak this? And it's really a collaborative process where story and emotions have to come first and then the science. But, we try to make it as correct as possible.
Well, yeah, it's a visual medium, so you have to take some liberties with that. And also you're building off of a franchise that started decades ago with the original series and of course Next Generation. How much did you have to like go back and kind of see what they established that you can build off of?
Yeah, so in the first job that I got with the burn in season 3 of Discovery, that was all about dilithium. And it was about how dilithium gets fried. And dilithium is not real, it's a Star Trek concept, but it has been around since 1966. So I had to go back and go look through all of the times we've talked about dilithium, figure out what gaps there were in those explanations and how we could utilize those to help tell this story. So, like, certainly I have to make sure I'm not contradicting anything that we've said in the past, or at the very least, we have an explanation why it might have changed. But yeah, I mean, it's that's something that like I love. Like I'm already a Star Trek fan, and so I already have a lot of this stuff in my brain anyway. So thankfully, it's not like requiring me to go back and watch 800 episodes every time I have a question. Like I have a lot of them up here already.
And I mean, so much is established in the original series. I mean, like time travel is in the very first season with
Yeah.
that, and we reuse a lot of those themes. Is there anything from you being a Star Trek fan that you wanted to add in yourself, or aspects because of your fandom as well as science that you added into the show?
Oh, that's a good question. What has been fun for me is that, I did my PhD in gravitational waves, which were a fringe science for a while. Sorry to all my colleagues. You all knew it was true. But after I left academia, they discovered gravitational waves. It's fine. I helped loosen the jar lid.
You were
uh,
there before it was cool.
Exactly. And but being able to work gravitational waves into Star Trek as even just mentioning them, let alone be used as plot devices, that for me it's a little not quite what you asked, just in the sense of like as a scientist, this is something that I was excited to get into Star Trek. And I think that keeps up with the legacy too of Star Trek really reflecting the science of our time. That if you go back to like the Next Generation and you look at the technical manuals and you look at all the stuff they created, then there's a lot of superconductor technology, because in the late 80s and early 90s superconductors were like the thing, right? They were like magical and cool and all this weird technology that we'd be able to do with them. And so I love that idea that we continue that legacy of just carrying science through all of the Star Trek that we work on. For me personally, as a Star Trek fan, my biggest honor was getting to help write lines for Captain Janeway. And
Oh,
she was, because
yeah.
she got me through graduate school. Like I watched Voyager every time I felt like quitting, every time I kind of questioned what I was doing, I would watch Voyager and I would be like, I can't let my captain down. Like I can't let her down. And so yeah, coming full circle, and that was amazing.
Is there any brainchild of your own that coming into this, like understanding science, but understanding Star Trek and being like, well, this could be possible in the future? Like, is there anything that was like that for you?
Yeah, I would say like the programmable matter, the detachable nacelles, a lot of the stuff we put into Discovery that kind of were motivated more plot wise and visual wise, and then having to backtrack the science into that. But we still get there, that's the idea. And if it really is so egregious that it couldn't work, then we have things like the Heisenberg compensator that just makes it work and breaks the laws of physics.
Yay, Star Trek. Are there any of those that aren't specifically real that you wish were real?
Ooh, I mean, I just honestly, for me, with my background and everything, I just want warp drive. I just want warp drive. It's such a basic answer, but like I just want warp drive.
That, yeah, me too.
Yeah,
To explore strange new worlds, and
exactly.
you're
I
gonna
mean,
need a warp drive.
the closest star system to us is like 4 light years away. So your 5-year mission is going to be kind of crummy if that's the only star system you can go to. We need warp drive.
Yeah, that if science. Make it happen.
We'll get on
Um,
that.
but of course, all of this has been giving you introductions into other areas, and so you've gotten into voice acting as well.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So weirdly, I've been doing voice acting for years, even before when I was a researcher, because I finished my PhD and I realized I had not spoken to a non-scientist in like 5 years. And so I took an acting class and I was like, yeah, this was like a pretty high-end acting class. And because I'm covered in tattoos, doing stage acting or doing on-camera work was not as amenable to me. And so I started voice acting and doing audio dramas, doing narrating audiobooks, just little projects here and there. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I got a couple commercial gigs and nothing huge, but it's a job, it's a gig, it's what we're doing. And so it was always a little bit there, but it was never a career for me. And then when we were going into Star Trek Prodigy, they had an opportunity. The writers had this wonderful character, Rock Talk, who's a young girl who wants to become a scientist. And so I helped work with them a lot on like talking to kids, like what I was like at that age. And so I'm just indelibly linked to Rock Talk and I love her so much. And they, the Hagemans, the showrunners, were so nice to say, like, well, when they get to Starfleet Academy, Rock Talk has to meet Dr. Erin. Like that's what has to happen. And so I came in and I did my voice and it was me. And then we continued that on. And then I also got the opportunity to voice act myself in Star Trek Online.
Oh, that's amazing.
We're just creating a Dr. Erin multiverse here.
As you should. I mean, who doesn't want to be in Star Trek? And yeah, that sounds amazing. And of course, that you've gone with Doug Jones and you're expanding to other projects as well. Can you tell us about some of the other projects that you've been working on?
Yeah. So, when vaccines were coming out and we were sort of crawling out of this weird state in the isolation and pandemic, I was talking with some of my friends we were in our mutual bubble together and we all work in the industry and we just felt like we were spinning our wheels and not knowing what the industry was going to look like. And we're all waiting for our break, right? I'm trying to move into TV writing and they're trying to, move into acting and directing and we're all just waiting for that. And we just said, we're smart people. Like, let's figure it out. Let's do it ourselves. We know so many talented people in this industry. Let's just get together and make a film and like make it proper, like make it right. We'd all done the film school student thing of just guerrilla shooting places. And this, we wanted to like, no, like I have a company now. I'll take care of all the producing. I used to be a manager. I know how to run projects and I know how to see them through. I'll do the admin stuff. And then we'll give people opportunities. And I realized that there's such a gap in telling LGBTQIA stories in the sci-fi space that we had so many creators who were so excited to come on board in these projects to tell stories where they get to see themselves on screen in a genre that they normally don't get to see themselves in. That it normally is just through metaphor, right?
Yeah.
And so we made our first film called Every Morning, which did a great festival run. And then I just finished one called Identities, which was written and directed by a friend of mine, Jesse Earl. And that is now available streaming on Nebula. So I've done 2 films in 2 years. John Delancey was in our last one. So we got Q to come in. And I just love the fact that like this Star Trek family, when I joined Star Trek, that was very much the message was like, this is a family. And it is very true. It's allowed me to meet all of these people. It's allowed me so many opportunities to just meet amazing people and build our careers together, which has been great.
I love that. I love that idea. And that's definitely what Star Trek puts forth. And this to hear that happen behind the scenes is fantastic. Future of Star Trek. What can you actually say or tell us?
Well, Starfleet Academy is coming. That is set in the Discovery era. So the sort of far 32nd century, I think. And this is a show that I have been dreaming of and wanting forever. I mean, even when I was in grad school, I had Starfleet Academy alumni jackets and everything. And I've had the license plate frame that says Starfleet Academy faculty member for a long time. And now it's true. And it's just a wonderful show. And it's been a wonderful process working with the showrunner, Noga Landau, with Alex Kurtzman. And again, what's wonderful about this era of Star Trek is just we're making Star Trek shows that it's like there's something for everyone. Someone might like all of it. I like all of it. Some people might just like episodic one-off stories with Pike and team and people that we know. And so they watch Strange New Worlds. Some people have never watched any Star Trek and they love Lower Decks. and like, and so I just love about like that's the direction that Star Trek is going, that we just have something for everyone, because like we said, that's the Star Trek ethos, right? Everyone is welcome. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
I mean, they've set that since the very first series, so I'm glad to hear that's continuing. Okay, favorites. Do you have a favorite episode of Star Trek of all time, or one that you've worked on specifically?
Ooh, okay. So I'll go to stuff I haven't worked on. Yes, it is Voyager's Counterpoint. It is episode where they are trying to get refugees out through a wormhole, and it's a Janeway story, and it's my favorite Star Trek episode ever. And I just, to be cheeky, I know we're short on time, but that's where they meet an alien who's like an academic snob, and they're trying to find the wormhole. And then Janeway says like, well, interspatial, he wouldn't know where to find an interspatial flexure. And he's like, interspatial flexure. And then I've been able to work interspatial flexure in twice into Star Trek episodes now. So that is a particular honor for me.
I love it. Yeah.
And then in terms of one that I worked on in season 4 of Discovery, the Species 10C episode, which I think is episode, I want to say 8 or 9. But it's kind of like an Arrival type episode where they're decoding an alien language using math and emotions. And it's such an organically Star Trek problem solving episode. Like, I'm just incredibly proud to have worked on that one as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for talking to us. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you. Live
nice
long
to meet
and prosper.
You too. Live long and prosper.
See ya.
See you.